What is going on, guys? We are back with another video. We got a car in here, a little bit different of a video, but we're going to be working on this for a customer. We're going to be tuning it, but also doing a few little tweaks. So this is a pretty interesting car. I'm going to show you guys. I've already taken a look at a few different things and kind of figured out a game plan, but we are going to be tuning it because it does have a Ford Racing control pack. That doesn't give it away. It has a Coyote in it, but it hasn't been tuned for the cold air intake, so we're going to be tuning it, putting some 47-pound injectors in it, an upgraded fuel pump, and fixing a few little wire things. So it is a pretty blue new Edge. Has some nice parts on it. 0304 Cobra rear bumper, the Raxium tail lights, 0304 Cobra deck lid. It is with a solid axle. Looks pretty nice. So he just picked this up from someone, I think in Georgia. But taking a look, we got a return fuel system with a regulator. We'll be diving into that a little bit more later. I did go ahead and take the radiator cover off, and I loosened the reservoir because I was trying to figure out what we're going to do for a cold air intake, because while this intake does fit in here, this filter is not really great for flow. The diameter is pretty small, and overall it's just not really a great intake option for this. So we'll be diving into some different intake options. Some options, include, removing the battery, but I think we're gonna kind of flip this over with a different intake, move the coolant res to over here, and that way we have some better fitment there. There's also various different wire nuts, and there's some different wiring things going on over here that we're going to kind of dive in, clean up, and fix. My biggest pet peeve is seeing wire nuts on a automotive build because it doesn't belong there. So there's a few of those. We'll get those cleaned up and removed from there. It does have a Volvo electric power steering pump. For the most part, runs and drives good. I can definitely see, I went out and logged it with the customer, and the long-term fuel trims are basically doing the learning of the cold air intake. It's about 10% off pretty much everywhere. So long-terms go ahead and learn 10%, and it drives pretty good. That's a great thing about these closed loop systems. They work pretty well, but we're gonna go ahead and tune it for the correct cold air intake. We're not even gonna bother tuning with this cold air because we're not going to be using it. So we'll get a nice cold air intake in there. We're going to get it switched over to E85 with 47-pound injectors, and we're going to drop in a DW300. The fuel level sender also doesn't work. So there's quite a few little things that we got to clean up, and we're going to be tuning it. I think we'll be putting it on a dyno, see what we can make. We don't know exactly what this engine is, besides that it's a Gen 1. We don't know if it's a truck motor, whatever. We do know it has a Boss intake, and we're going to be putting 47-pound injectors, E85, cold air intake, and it does also have headers. So it'll make somewhere over 400, be pretty fun, and we'll get it tweaked up here. All right, so we got the coolant reservoir moved over. We're going to be using this S&B GT350 cold air intake. Seems to be fitting in there pretty well. It's also going to be our best choice of what we have right now. The big JLT doesn't fit. The old style JLT does fit, but it kind of looks a little goofy, so I think that's going to be our best bet right now. And it's going to fit under the stock hood. I'm going to change around a lot of these vacuum lines. There's this big red one here that just kind of looks goofy. We're going to get rid of that. So we also got to put some 47-pound injectors in it and do a few more cleanups in the engine bay. All right, the engine bay is already looking a ton cleaner, kind of cleaning up a lot of odds and ends. I just went ahead and loaded the tune for the GT350 math curve, which is what this S&B is, and the LU47 injectors, and we'll start tweaking from there. This is a 93 tune, but we're gonna be switching it over to E85, but that way we can start it up on what we got, dial in the math curve, and then go from there. All right, guys, I didn't film the whole process of fixing a lot of the little odds and ends on this car, but we got the cold air intake all set up, fuel pressure regulator remounted, the DW300 pump with a 98 Cobra hat, that's also there. I got the speedometer working as well as the level sender. I think I accomplished everything I needed to get accomplished hardware-wise for my customer. But now it's time to tune. This is the fun part. This is the part that I love to do. So we already got it pretty close. It's on E85. It's got 47-pound injectors. We got this S&B GT350 cold air. So I plopped in my GT350 math curve and made some slight corrections. So now we're gonna go out and test it. The weather doesn't look too awesome, but we'll see how it looks down in Mexico. We're just gonna be doing some basic data logging, and we're gonna get this thing tuned up, ready to go on the dyno. So I'll bring you guys along for the tuning process. I want to be tuning some more cars here soon. I really want to get a dyno here so that I can tune some cars and you know, really build my value files. I've been tuning a few cars remote, but this one, you know, had a few things that we need to fix up hardware wise, and you know, now it's ready to go. I think the engine bay looks a lot better. Coolant reservoir moved over. The cold air looks a lot better. The old one was really small. Looking good. We also just did a fresh oil change, cleaned up some wires, and that is that. This thing is beautiful. Sonic blue, new edge, Coyote. I'm not positive if this is a truck motor or not. I'm sure I'll find out here pretty soon on my data logs, but we'll go from there. The reason why I think it could be a truck motor is the valve covers are missing the little coil cover, little ball there, which could be truck valve covers, but you know, we don't really know exactly what's down there. Well, actually another thing that could give it away would be a truck timing cover. But regardless, it doesn't really matter because it's pretty sweet. So the very first step to the tuning process and starting to tune the car, besides inputting your hardware, is you need to make sure your short-term fuel trims are within check. We're idling right now at 1.0 lambda. We got 1 to 2% correction on short term, so basically no correction. Usually their general rules within 5% throughout the curve. Can you get it closer? Yeah, but you know, there are some different variables that will change those fuel trims here and there. You know, your fuel, just a small margin, you know, 1, 2%, 3%, even 5% is still a pretty small margin. So we're gonna do some drivability stuff, make sure this thing drives good, and then we'll do some basic wide open throttle stuff, nothing too crazy. It's really just about logging the car, not about, you know, going and ripping on it. Just making sure it's ready for the dyno, and so that we don't have to play around with any sort of silly issues on the dyno. So we're gonna do that. Log still looks great. Long terms have learned 0.8%, so long terms are another great tool that the factory ECU has to go ahead and learn that correction, that variance between, you know, the different fuel types and different temperatures and stuff that makes tiny differences in your fuel trim and stuff like that. We also fixed the speedometer, and guess what? It's working. That's pretty sweet. We got a log running, but just glancing over to make sure, from what I can see, everything is looking pretty good down there. that's something to watch out for. Because you could get stuck going wide open throttle, and you don't want to do that. So we're probably gonna, sorry Hector, we're gonna move those out of the equation here. Yeah, now we got a lot better. Floor mats, very dangerous. Get stuck going wide open throttle when you don't want to be. Not a great scenario. So, everything is looking great. I think we have an 8.3 target of Lambda, which is a little bit on the safe side, but we're on 885, so we're gonna, play around with it on the dyno, but we're just gonna make sure it's nice and safe on the street. We got beautiful fuel trims. I mean, everything's just looking really, really awesome. So, nothing really to complain about there. Gearing's really long. I wasn't trying to wring it out that much, but we got out to 7,500 RPM, so we'll go take a look at this log and make a few adjustments, and yeah, see what we're gonna do. Alright, so I'm looking at the wide open throttle log. Everything looks good. The great thing about these closed loop systems is they keep AFR pretty much in check if you're close. I'm seeing a 9 to 10% correction on short terms at wide open throttle. So what we're going to go ahead and do is go into that MAF period that it is in wide open throttle, which in this case we are starting out at 140. So from 140 to 110, we're going to go ahead and add maybe 8%. Don't want to overshoot it, but so we'll go into our MAF airflow versus period, 140 and up. We're just going to go ahead and add 10%. I'm going to say 8%. So multiply those values by 1.08. Do that. Yeah. We'll start with that. Make sure fueling's good there. Load that in. Okay, so we made some corrections. We're gonna go test and make sure everything's looking good. Guys, it's looking pretty well dialed. There might be like some minor corrections, maybe 2%, but it's looking really good. So just looking at this right now, short terms 3% adding. So yeah, we'll probably go ahead and make another correction, because you usually want it pulling away fuel rather than adding. So we'll get that kind of squared away on the dyno. Coming up to our MAF flow, this is kind of a general idea of how you can have an idea. Is it making more power or is it not on the street? Load and mass airflow pound per minute. We're seeing 43, and we saw 40 on the last run, so that's pretty dang good. Let's see what we get up to. 43, and there's a chance it might have Mustang cams, because it's still making power to 7,700. It's about where it's starting to dip down. So we got an 8.3 watt target, and we saw up to 30.5 degrees. no knock. That's about where I think we're gonna call it on the street, because everything is looking solid. Very happy with that. So I think we're gonna head back and schedule some dyno time. That way we can get on the dyno, get a number for the customer, and I've been wanting to play with a little bit of VCT stuff, see if we can kind of optimize that power. I do want to try to see if we can find out what cams it has. I'm guessing Mustang cams by the way that it is still making power. But yeah, it's looking super solid. We got 0 knock activity there, so actually the knock sensor's adding timing. So it's saying you can add up to 2 degrees there, so it's looking killer there. So I think we'll call that a wrap on the street logging. I mean, I have my tunes pretty well dialed already. I've never tuned this cold air on this combo, but I used the GT350 MAF curve as a start, since that's what it's based off of, or supposed to be, and then made some corrections from there, and pretty much good to go.